Hello and welcome to this short tutorial on how to complete the read and written summaries on the AQA AS and A-Level Languages exams. This question is usually question number 7 on the papers. Now, today I'm going to be focused on Spanish because that's my preferred language, but the strategies that I'm going to be using and the methodology that I'm going to take you through and how to go about approaching this question can be used in any of the other languages, in the French or in the German, so long as it's AQA. Before we look at how to go about doing it, before I work through an example with you, it's important to look at how these summaries are marked. The summaries are marked on 2 assessment objectives. You've got AO2, which is your content, and you've got AO3, which is your language. And those 2 marks are tallied up, and that gives you the mark for question 7. Some key bits to be aware of. So for the content mark, you're rewarded marks for points that contain the required information. So what you'll have in the mark scheme is you'll have a list of things for the AO2 mark, a list of key items of information that you've got to include in your answer, and if it includes that, then you get awarded credit for that. Now, this information can be expressed in your own words, or you can extract it straight from the text, as long as you manipulate it to match the bullet point. Now, the bullet points, you'll see 3 of them, and what you have to do is you have to change those bullet points and use them to start your response. So the information that you lift from the actual exam itself, you have to alter and you have to change the grammar. So if you lift information that doesn't match the original bullet point grammatically, or if it doesn't make sense with it, or you lift too much, then you don't get credit for that for AO2. For your AO3 for your language, I want to have a look at the top band only. You're allowed occasional minor errors, the key being occasional. There shouldn't be often, there should every now and again. And you should be able to manipulate complex grammar. So when I'm saying complex grammar, it's about lifting that information out of the text and then changing it so it marries with the bullet points starter. I like to think of the bullet points as little sentence starters from which you attach the information that you lift out of the text to. AQA talk about major and minor errors. So I just want to talk this through a little bit with you because it's quite important that you understand what major and minor consist of. So major, quite straightforward. Wrong verb form. So for instance, if you put I played instead of I played, or he plays instead of he played in the wrong tense, or maybe the wrong person, you don't get any credit for that. Incorrect pronoun use as well, that would bring your mark down. And errors in basic expressions. So for instance, in Spanish you say tengo 5 años, I'm 5 years old. If you'd said soy 5 años, then you wouldn't get any credit for that. That would be classed as a major error. In terms of minor errors, incorrect spelling is a minor error. Now, what's important with this is it hasn't got to change the actual meaning. So I'll give you an example. If we've got vista, which is a view, one word that often gets confused with is, and spelled wrong, is visita, which is a visit. So if we wanted to talk about the visit, but I wrote vista, view instead, then that would be classed as a major error because that is confusing. I'll be reading view instead of visit. And the same goes for accents. So if we take the verb viajar, to travel, if I wanted to say I travel, we've got viajo. But the only thing that distinguishes viajo, I travel, with viajó, he, she, it travelled, is that accent. So if you had to say he travelled by boat and you put the first option without the accent, then that would be classed as a major error because that's the only thing that distinguishes it is the accent. Now, the word limit for AS level is usually 70. For AS for final A level, it's usually 90 words, and your marking stops at the first natural break between 90 and 100 words, or 70 and 80 words on the AS level. So the first full stop or the first new clause after 90 words. So do keep it concise. Don't lift loads and loads and loads, and don't waffle. I want to take you through now how I would go about approaching this. So the first thing you want to do is you want to read the rubric. When I'm talking about a rubric, I'm talking the information given at the top of the question. And what this does is it introduces you to the topic, and what it does is it'll help you get your head into thinking about different word families and different vocabulary that's related to that topic that you're going to meet later on. So you kind of fine-tune your brain, you tune your brain into what you're going to say. And think about what's it generally about. After you've read the rubric, translate the bullet points into English. Now, each bullet point's worth a certain amount of marks, and if it's 3 marks, you need to give 3 details in your answer for that bullet point. When you've done that, then go to the text and the insert, and you want to highlight the parts of the text that refer to the bullet points where the answers lie. So where the answer lies for bullet point 1, I'll be highlighting that and put a little number 1 next to it so you know exactly where it is in that text. When you're talking about reading strategies, we call it scanning. So you're scanning for where that information is. Once you've done that, you go back to your bullet points and use your bullet point to start your answer. So you use it, like I said earlier on, as a little sentence starter. You might have to change a little bit. Following that, You then want to go your answers in the insert, and you want to see what you need to do, what you need to change. Perhaps it's a verb form, perhaps it's going from indirect to direct speech, perhaps it's changing verbs from the I form to the he, she, it form, the first person to the third person. So you look at that information, you see what you need to change, and then you marry it up with your bullet point. Finally, you check your answer. Is it under 90 words? Have you checked your verbs? Is there any accents missing that you need? And have you given sufficient details? And most importantly, your synonyms. Do your synonyms have the same meaning? If you're talking about religion and you use creer, to believe, and use pensar as a synonym, to think, it's slightly different. It's got a different nuance, so that would potentially lose your marks. So be very, very careful with synonyms. So moving on. Here's an example from 2019, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to do this with you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the actual question. This would be in your exam paper itself, not the insert. So we've got una entrevista con un sacerdote uruguayo. So an interview with a Uruguayan priest. Now what's important here is I've got sacerdote, and it's a priest, so I'm thinking it's going to be, the vocab's going to be religious. I think about church as well. So I'm thinking about, this is what I'm going to say. So I'm going to say a lot of religious vocabulary perhaps. And entrevista as well is quite important because an interview is going to be in the first person, which just suggests that I'm going to have to manipulate this into the third person when I'm sandwiching my answer together. So I'm seeing the intent for the text. I'm going to look at the instructions. Lee este artículo de un blog uruguayo. Escribe un párrafo en español resumiendo lo que has entendido. No debes usar más de 90 palabras y debes incluir los siguientes puntos en tu resumen. Incluye la actitud de los jóvenes hacia la Iglesia Católica, según Roberto, 3 detalles. Lo que hará la parroquia del Padre José para mejorar la situación, 3 detalles. La mayor razón por la que muchos han dejado de ser sacerdotes, 1 detalle. I'm having a look at this now. I'm going to translate the points into English. This is my second step. So, here we go. There we go. So I've done my translation there. So the attitude of young people towards the Catholic Church, according to Roberto, what the parish of Father Jose will do to improve the situation, and the biggest reason for why many have stopped being priests. Now what's important is, I'm just going to quickly highlight this, and you give 3 details for that first point, 3 details for that second point, and 1 detail for that last point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to what would be my insert, and I'm going to have a quick read and find where that information is. Now what's important with this bit, which I've highlighted, is, so when I've done this, I've scanned for where the answer is, and what we've got is, to help us with our details, we said we needed 3 details before. We've got, in first place, so that's going to be detail 1, second place, that's going to be detail 2, third place, that's going to be detail 3. Now this, I know is my answer for number 1, so I'm just going to put a little number 1 next to it, so I know that is. So what we've got here is I've got my 3 points highlighted out, and what we've got is, we've got our point 1 there, we've talked about the first place, second place, third place. For the second point, what we've got is, what will your parish do in future to change the situation? We've got what they're going to do firstly, so this is 1 action here, so I'm going to look for another verb for the next bit. We will have to distance ourselves from the traditional structures. Again, this is something that they're going to have to do. If we look at this bit in between, hay ciertos sacerdotes con cuentas de Instagram que tienen casi 280,000 seguidores. This bit here, where it's talking about priests that have got Instagram followings of more than 280,000, it's not relevant. It's not part of the answer. It's not what the church is going to do. So what they'll sometimes do is they'll put a little random fact in the middle to try and send you off the track. Don't do it. We're looking for verbs here. And the same with this last one. Debemos tener una mentalidad más abierta. Now what you've seen is I've highlighted straight away these modal verbs, tenemos, debemos. If I lift them and sandwich them with the bullet point, we have to, it's going to be basically imply that I'm a priest as well. So no, we need to change that. So that's something to bear in mind when we come at the later steps. And for this last one, if we look at the last one, this is interesting. This is where you got to be careful. Starts with, ciertas personas opinan que los escándalos a los que se ha enfrentado la Iglesia Católica son la causa principal, pero no estoy de acuerdo. This is the key bit. I don't agree. So where it's talking about in the point, the biggest reason for why many people have stopped, he doesn't agree with that. He says, lo fundamental, the fundamental thing, es que queremos enamoraros, we want to fall in love, y casarnos, and to get married. Celibacy is not in fashion anymore. So that's where your answer is. So sometimes you have to read the full thing and make sure you delve a little bit deeper before you go in and extract information. So I've now got where my points are in the text that I need to use. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my bullet points. I'm going to use them to help me start. So for the first point, I'm just going to start probably with los jóvenes and then continue on from this one. The next one, what the parish of Padre Jose is going to do. I'm going to start with the parish of Father Jose, and I'm probably just going to start each sentence up. Probably just going to start each one with va is going to. Be careful. The parish, you've got to make sure you change that verb. Now, if I were to go back to this and simply lift this full sentence here with the tendremos que, it wouldn't make sense with my starter. So this is where you've got to manipulate a little bit. And la mayor razón por la que muchos han dejado de ser sacerdotes, I'll probably start with la mayor razón es que. And then change this, we want to los sacerdotes quieren, something along those lines. So I've got my starters now, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the information that I've got and I'm going to sandwich it with the bullet point starters and manipulate it where I need to be, giving as many details as I can, the relevant amount of details. And what I should say for that last point is, when I'm talking about los sacerdotes, I'm implying all priests, where actually what we're really talking about more than anything else is young priests. So I'm going to put in jóvenes. So, just to recap what I've done. First thing I've done is I've looked at the rubric at the top, get my head in tune with what kind of vocabulary I'm going to say and what the topic's going to be about. I've then gone to the bullet points and I've translated the bullet points into English, making sure I'm aware of how many details I need to give for each point. After I've done that, I've then gone to my insert and I've highlighted where the answers are in the insert and annotate them with number 1, 2, 3 to show which bullet point they correspond with. Following that, I've then looked at my bullet points to use some vocab from there to start my answer. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sandwich my starter with the rest of the answer. So I'm going to start with los jóvenes. So first thing I've done is, if we look at the text, it's got tenemos. I can't lift that, I'm talking about young people, so I'm going to have to say they have. And again, that nuestras, I'm going to have to change to sus. So there's my first point, but that's only one detail. I need to give a few more details than that. So look at this expression here, empezamos a volvernos. This is important. I'm changing it to they are starting, so empiezan a volvernos. What lots of people will do is, with this reflexive verb, they'll forget to change that nos to correspond with the third person. So no empezamos a volvernos, but empiezan a volverse. So I'm happy with that first point there now. The second one, what the parish of Father Jose are going to do. And again, I'm just going to use these infinitives. And again, watch out these verbs, because what we've got is we've got the first person plural. We need to change these to the third person singular because we're talking about the parish. And again, we've got aprovecharnos. We need to change it to he, she, it. Aprovecharse. Happy with that. And the last point, my oración. And there we have it. In total, that's about 74 words, more or less. Well within my comfort zone. There's a couple of extra little details I probably could have missed out if I wanted to, such as why they've done it to attract young people. I could have missed that out. I've given the reason why. I'd probably have missed that out actually in reflection, but it's there. So, finally, just to recap what we've done more than anything else. We've read the rubric, we've translated the points into English, we've highlighted parts of the text that the bullet points refer to and labelled them. We've used the bullet to start our answer, we've manipulated the text for our answer, and then we've gone through. We've checked that it's under 90 words. My verbs and accents I'm happy with. I've got the right amount of details, and have I used any synonyms? I've used a couple, but they don't change the meaning. Hope that was useful. Thank you very much.